Welcome to the Bullish podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish podcast. What's up, fam, and welcome to the Bullish podcast. I'm James Dreesen, your mental performance coach. And if you're new to the show, I'm super stoked to have you here. Welcome. I'm not sure what brought you to our show, but maybe you have heard that we look at mindset. And so if you've ever looked at an Olympian or a professional musician or high-level performer, just someone who is just over the top, achieving their goals, and you're asking yourself, what are they doing differently that I could learn? It's mindset. Mindset is what separates the Kobe Bryants from everybody else, the Michael Jordans from everybody else, the Tom Brady's from everybody else, the Michael Phelps from everybody else. It's mindset and mental skills that separates the high-level performers from the rest of the flock. And how do we learn this? Well, 1 Corinthians 9:25 says, everyone who trains for the games trains for a crown that won't last forever, but we train for a crown that will last forever. So here at Bullish Drive Agency, we hope to instill mental skills that you'll be able to take outside of your craft, outside of your art, and into the greater world and everything beyond. And today's guest has an incredible insight about this. He talks about his journey from the beginning to entering the NFL as the very first African-American NFL punter and moving into the unsuspected journey afterwards. And he actually just released a book called Punt, Flip the Field. And you can pick it up at gregcoleman8.com to just add another great piece of literature on mindset and structuring and reframing over adversities and overcoming hardships. And most importantly, like you'll hear in today's conversation, just that real relationship with God. And Greg today, I'm super blessed that he was willing to talk about just those real life conversations he had with God through the different stages, because it's a relationship. It's not something that you just see on Sundays. It's not something that you just go to God when you're angry or upset, right? There's an ongoing living relationship of hope and motivation and trust. Greg Coleman, he's here today. I'm super stoked to have him on here and just hear his story and everything he's done from punting for the Minnesota Vikings and becoming a legend there, moving into a sports analyst and the pregame preach. He's done so much in the world of sports and beyond. So I'm super stoked to say out loud, Greg Coleman, welcome to the Bullish Drive podcast.
Thanks, man. It's great being here. Anytime you get a chance to share some thoughts, beliefs, habits, formulas to success. I mean, you've seen all of the experts talk about, 7 steps to this, 3 steps to this, but it's a combination of a lot of things. There is no one set thing or reason that will equal success. Although I do believe that when preparation meets opportunity, 9 times out of 10, it's going to equal success. So those are some core principles that I have lived by for most of my journey.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've been blessed to hear you speak. You've come to our church a couple times over at Creative, and I remember you telling a story of how you went from how you got drafted into the Vikings. Are you willing to share a little bit of that story and just kind of the drive that got you there?
Yeah, well, obviously graduating from Florida A&M University, HBCU school down in Tallahassee. I was a 14th round draft choice by the Cincinnati Bengals in 1976. The mistake that I made when I went to training camp was running the 40. The 40 was a baseline of creativity, athleticism, and all of those things. And I was also a hurdler, high school hurdler, college hurdler, qualified for the 76 Olympics back in the day. But guys in track weren't making a whole heck of a lot of money. So I had to make a decision to go the football route, and was just coming off a pretty good track season. So the speed was up. So I ran a 4.41, 440. The coaches looked at me, Mike Brown over at the Bengals, and said, hey, you got too much speed just to be a punter. So that was back in the day when they would switch quarterbacks, especially black quarterbacks from HBCUs and in other positions, to wide receiver, defensive back, and all of those things. And long story short, it was not a fair training camp, because they tried me at wide receiver, tried me at defensive back, and then I would still have to go compete. Long story short, I got cut. Went back home to Jacksonville, and I taught high school history. And did some coaching there in the area, but let those principals and coaches and kids know, hey, I'm going back. I'm going to get another shot in the NFL, so I'm not going to be here permanently. Fortunately, I got a shot with the Cleveland Browns in 1977 and made that football team. Forrest Gregg was the coach, the former Green Bay Packer, All-Pro, Hall of Famer. And he gave me a shot, and I ran the 40 again, and he said the same thing. Man, you look like you've got great speed. I said, Coach, I went through that before. If you're going to switch me to wide receiver, defensive back, just cut me now because I'm a punter. And he said, well, I'm not going to do any of that. You'll just be the fastest punter in the National Football League. So Forrest Gregg gave me a shot. I punted for the Cleveland Browns in 1977. Forrest got fired the following year. In comes a new coach. Greg, we're going to give you a shot. I said, Coach, why don't you cut me now? I know how this thing goes. You go back in the draft. You picked another quote unquote quarterback punter in the second round. Just let me go now. Nope. The best man is going to get the job. Well, I led the league that preseason. We get to the opening week of the season, maybe on a Thursday. Normally, if you're going to get cut, you get cut that Monday or Tuesday. You don't wait to Thursday or Friday before the first game. Well, I get this call this Thursday morning. Hey, Greg, Coach Ritigliano wants to see you and bring your playbook. And I knew what it was. And I was a little ticked. And I said, well, heck, man, I don't have a playbook. I'm a punter. I just kick the ball. Well, how soon can you get here? I'll get there when I get there, because they wanted you in and out and early before the other players came, because I came scrolling through the locker room, and then the word had got out that Coleman is going to get cut. So a lot of my teammates were very, very upset. Didn't think it was fair. Neither did I. But, that's the nature of the beast. Right. So I got cut. I tried out with 3 or 4 other different teams. We were still living in Cleveland. My wife, we were expecting our first child. And I can remember, it was a very dark time in my life. It was very disappointing because I had done everything that I was supposed to do. I beat the best. I was leading the league in that category, and things still were. It wasn't fair. Well, I can remember watching a game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Minnesota Vikings. Living in Cleveland, 9th floor apartment window. I go to my window and I open it, and I'm screaming at God. I said, you lied to me. You didn't keep your word. You said if I prayed, if I did all of the things that I was supposed to do, that you would give me the desires of my heart. I said, where are you? Because as I mentioned, Jake, I tried out with 4 different other teams and nobody wanted to make a decision. Right. And I said, where are you? And I said, I just want to play football so bad that I'll even play for the Minnesota Vikings. And I closed that window. God has a funny sense of humor. The next day, I got a call from the Minnesota Vikings, and I spent the next 10 years punting here for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, I know that was a long way around the block to answer your question about how I got to Minnesota, but there are always different scenarios and different roadblocks and even different doors that had to be open. There was a window closed with the Cleveland Browns, but God opened it. Saw another opportunity because my faith was challenged. It was challenged. It was challenged, and looking back, you say, what God tells you: don't fear, don't give up. Stand on your faith, stand on the word. It was a mountain. Matthew 17:20 says, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. So that mountain was moved. Man. And
Come on, man. I love that. I love that story. And that's why I wanted you to share that, because it's so good, right? Like, being mad at God's a very real part of being a Christian, right? Like it's going to happen. Like at some point you're going to question God, you know? And do you feel like, do you feel like the timing was perfect that everything kind of culminated there in that moment? Do you think if you would have moved to the Vikings or changed earlier, you would have stepped into that calling in the same way?
Well, everything happens for a reason. And I say tongue in cheek, mad at God, but I should have been mad at the enemy, because the enemy puts roadblocks in your way. And it takes a level of maturity to figure that out, that it's not God depriving you of what you would like and what he would like to have for you. You know, they're just steps. And you talked about the timing of it. The timing was perfect. Because I had to go through those battles. I had to go through those disappointments, because at a very young age, I learned that professional football was not a career. It was a temporary means to an end. Because no matter how great you are, no matter how successful you are, you cannot outrun Father Time. And Father Time has caught up with each and every Hall of Fame football player, Hall of Fame coach, the greatest athletes in the world. Time never loses. So you utilize and take advantage of that opportunity of professional sports. You can elevate your life, you can elevate your family and generations if you make wise choices and wise decisions. And I utilize that platform, for the monetary needs, but also used it to launch post-career broadcasting, corporate America. Spent 24 years with a public safety communications company, one of the top companies in the world. It was a worldwide company. And also my time, 21 years on the sideline with the Minnesota Vikings as part of their radio broadcast team. Those were just phenomenal experiences, phenomenal opportunities that were birthed with the opportunity that came from playing professional football for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah. I love that. I love how you talk about how being an athlete like that is just it's what do you say? It's a temporary means to an end, right? It's not a career. And I think a lot of athletes, ones that I've talked to, they identify so much with the sport that they play. So then all of a sudden when something happens, like, time catches up to us, or an injury happens, all of a sudden their entire identity is rocked. So what would you say to encourage like athletes just to keep that mindset where it is just a temporary means to an end? Like, how'd you get there?
Well, number one, when I got cut, because listen, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. There were a number of great professional athletes that graduated from my high school. The great late Kenny Burroughs, Harold Carmichael, Hall of Famer, Brian Dawkins, the Gaffney brothers, Terry LeCount. The list goes on and on and on. I think at my last count, there were at least 85 guys that had either put on a NFL, Major League Baseball, or NBA uniform from my high school, just one single high school down in Jacksonville. So we would go out and we would talk and we would listen to these guys, and they would talk about what it meant to be a pro, how to handle your business. Those were lessons that were always in the back of my mind. And after I got cut from Cincinnati, because I got my education, because I got my degree at Florida A&M University, education has always been the cornerstone and the rock of the African-American community, period. Because if you have it in your head and it's sealed down in your heart, nobody can take it away from you. So I knew that football was a temporary means to an end, and sooner or later, you were going to have to prepare for the life after football. So even during my time, I would intern, I would do different things during the off season, trying to find my niche, what was going to be my path after football. So I would let younger athletes know that it's going to end sooner or later. Now, today's athletes, it's a little bit different because they're making a heck of a lot more bank now than we did back in the day. But regardless to how much you make, it's how much can you conserve? How much can you plan your future? Because let me tell you something. Let's cut through the chase. There is nothing like the NFL. There is nothing like 70,000 people screaming with you, screaming your name, watching that number and all of that stuff. But at the same time, James, it can be gone in a blink of an eye through an injury, a coach's decision, attrition, or you may not just be good enough anymore.
Yeah.
And before they call you in the office, they have made a decision. Before you leave that office, they have unstitched the back of your name off of that jersey and stitching somebody else's name on it. That's just how quick it ends. And all of the guys that you knew, all the guys that you had a relationship with, guess what? They're still in the locker room. You're out in the real world having to find what's my next move, what's my next step. And a lot of guys have prepared to make the adjustment. A lot of guys have a difficult time years and years afterwards. But there's nothing like wearing that jersey.
Right. And then it's hard to compare life after, I'm sure, once you move on from that, right?
It is. I was so blessed because my wife had a level of maturity in knowing that this game was going to come to an end sooner or later, and that those guys were in the locker room were going to still be guys in the locker room. But we had to navigate outside the walls of the locker room, outside of the walls of the NFL. And she developed a core of friends and relationships outside of all of sports. So she said, hey, we're going to have a get together with some friends over one night. You good with that? Yeah. I come in, I didn't know any of these people. And I said, well, who is this? So these are people that I met in the community, because you're not going to play football forever. Yeah. And it taught me a very, very good lesson. That whether they're teammates, the relationships that you develop while you're playing sports, they're for a season. And if you try to force those relationships after the season is up, it's like milk. Okay. Milk is good for you. Every carton of milk has an expiration date on it. Yep. And yeah, you can drink it, but it could possibly make you sick or it can kill you. Yeah. It's the same way with relationships. If you try to stay in a relationship outside of the season that God gives you with that, with those journey for those people, those relationships can become toxic and can cause you more harm than what you feel trying to force yourself into this part of this relationship, stay in this part of a relationship with a different group of people.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Can you talk, what are your, and if you're comfortable talking about this, but what do your conversations look like with God? Like when you're going through these moments, when you got that pressure of like, this could be like my name could be off this jersey next, or these friends, I built this relationship with them, but now it might be a new season where I have to move on. What does that look like? How do you verify those moves with God and find comfort in those seasons?
Just like I'm talking to you, we've developed a relationship many, many years ago. Hey, with no disrespect, hey, G, what's going on? What's my next move? What are you trying, what should I learn from this particular situation? I thought I was past this. Yeah, I know that I'm not a perfect human being. I was a good for nothing, low down scum of the earth, backbiting, homongering sinner on my way to hell until God put his arms around me and said, don't be defined about what you do, by the mistakes that you made. You're just passing through. Oof. On this journey, if you are able to let your light shine, to light a path for somebody else, I'll be there for you. And he has been every step of the way. Have I made some missteps? Absolutely. Have I done some stupid things? Absolutely. But that's why he was on the cross. He paid for that. He paid for those sins that I would not have to be locked up, in prison, where a lot of guys that I grew up with, in our community, I mean, he just put his arms around me, when they would go left, he said, no, baby, you go right. And I've learned to hear that voice. And I know that it's not counterfeit. And the enemy would want you to think, oh man, that ain't God. Hey man, you can do what you want to do. Come on. See, there's a Hall of Fame. There are a number of Hall of Fames. And, I was just fortunate enough to be in several. State of Florida Sports Hall of Fame, Black College Football Hall of Fame, my Florida A&M Hall of Fame, both track and football, high school Hall of Fame, and all of those things. But I remember before I made a decision to follow Christ, I was a Hall of Famer on Satan's Wall of Fame. Ooh. And, all the glitz and the glamour and all of those things. But once I came into the light and the knowledge of knowing what God was requiring of me, I did whatever it took to get my name off of Satan's Wall of Fame and to make sure that my name was written in the Lamb's Book of Life.
Man,
it made all the difference.
Yeah. And there's obedience behind that too. Right?
Oh, baby. Oh, you better know it. You better know it. You can't do what you want to do all the time. We're selfish by nature. And I can be one of the most selfish people in the world. But I understand that a lot of times it's not about me.
Right.
It's about what he wants you to do and what he wants you to be. Because again, let your light so shine in whatever it might be. It can be a flicker, but that flicker of light in darkness can light the path for somebody else who may be swimming in darkness. So whatever God gives you, whether your name is up in the lights of, New York City on Madison Avenue, or Podunk, Mississippi, if you've got a light, man, that light is not for you. That light is for somebody else. So continue to light the path for somebody else and give God the glory.
Oh man, that's good, man. Amen. That's it. We're good, guys. We can go. This is oh my goodness, man. That's so good. Because it takes a lot of weight off our shoulders as well, right? Just recognizing that we're just shepherds of it, right? Even with our businesses. Right. We're just founders. We're just stewarding something that God's the CEO of, and then, like you said, if we can have that conversation where we just ask him, well, God's CEO of my business, what do I do today? Do I reach out to Greg Coleman? Do we talk about this stuff? If it's not, then okay, cool. We'll wait till another time,
Yeah.
Man, I love that. Now after the NFL, you went into, you work with corporate America too. Something that I'm seeing is, a lot of former athletes will move into the corporate America. What type of skills carries over into that, and how does being an athlete help you out in the corporate world with mindsets?
Man, that's a great question. And the key word is mindsets. In my book, I talk about having a punter's mindset, because a lot of times, when you think about punting, that means most people will look at it as an act of surrender or giving up. But in essence, it's one of the most strategic moves in all of football. So many things can happen on fourth down. You can have a great punt, putting your opponent inside the 5-yard line. You could have a fake punt, run to get the first down. You could have a punt return if you're on the other side. That could change the game. My job as a punter was to flip the field. And in my book, it's called Punt, Flip the Field, and Get a Leg Up on Life. And it's a mindset. Yeah, I tried. What I say in the book, I'm going to teach you how to punt, but first I'm going to stretch you. I'm going to stretch you mentally. I'm going to stretch you to create habits and rituals. And if you follow these rules, if you follow these routines, proven principles, then you'll be able to punt, put the opponent in a different spot, flip the field in your favor, and then get a leg up on life. And you can use that in athletics. You can use it in business. You can use it in your family. You can use it in your personal life. So the book is doing very, very well. It's a project that I knew that was going to pop sooner or later. I was not in a hurry. I took my time with it. and it was a great project, and we're getting great feedback from it. And the second book is going to be a devotional. I'm taking all of those segments from the pregame preach prior to the Vikings games, and we'll turn those into just some inspirational words for somebody. You know, what we write and what you create is not for everybody. I knew the pregame preach over the last 20 years prior to retiring from the broadcast was not for everybody. Yeah. But it was for those people who were in a dark place, who just needed a word of encouragement to lift their spirits and even to challenge them. So the feedback that we have gotten, you know, from that segment was just incredible, because there were some people in some dark places about to do some not so smart things, but just that word, because it was tying faith and football. You would not believe the feedback that we have gotten over the years for that. So, you know, I give God the glory for that. And it started, the pregame preach started as a joke with my broadcast partner, Paul Allen. I was speaking at chapel on the road, and he happened to stick his head in the door and heard me sharing, because that segment prior to kickoff was called Coleman's Keys to the Game. And he said, well, we're going down for Coleman's Keys. He said, no, you know what, man, I heard this brother preach last night. We're going down for the pregame preach, thus created this phenomenon called pregame preach. And Paul did it as tongue-in-cheek, because Paul was not walking as a believer. Yeah. And I never tried to preach at him, preach to him. I just tried to live God's word. And several years later, a number of years later, after just demonstrating how God wanted us to walk and to be his living word, Paul Allen is now walking, talking, a believer, doing chapels for the jockeys over at Canterbury Downs. So again, you don't necessarily always have to beat somebody and cite scripture and all of those things, but they look at you, they look at your walk. How are you going to do when the shim hits the fan? How are you going to do when the baby's not doing well? How are you going to do when the money gets funny? And if you are leaning on God's word and knowing that that's your core, come on, man. Yeah. That's all he wants us to do.
Man, it's the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, right? When you walk into the room, are you setting the temp, or are you just going to blend in with everybody else, man? And exactly. Man, I love, and even as a Christian, like, you know, we look at the Bible is like a mirror to us, right? We look at the Bible and we look at how are we doing, you know, and then people who don't know the Bible, they'll look at you and be like, man, how's Greg Coleman just like such a happy dude all the time? Like, how is he just always pushing through, right?
You know, I heard many, many years ago, be careful, because you may be the only Jesus or the only God that somebody sees in a time of need.
Dang.
So if you take that personal, man, you know, even with all of the blemishes and bumps and lumps that you've taken in your life and that will take in the future, just know that you are an example. You know, you are an ambassador. An ambassador goes forth and represents. Yeah. And all we're doing is representing God. Sometimes we do it flawlessly. Other times people look at us and say, man, you're a Christian. If that's what Christianity is about, I don't want none of it. Yeah. So it's a responsibility. And I just try and live it. I'm not one that will, you know, dump scripture all over your head and all those kind of things, man. And I just try and live it day by day.
Yeah. That's good, man. Well, we're running near the end of our time, and I appreciate you just hopping on the podcast today and just sharing your wisdom and, you know, your walk with God. Is there anything else you want to leave for any of our listeners before we close out today?
Wow. You know, we talked about mindsets.
Yeah.
Have the mindset of Christ. And that is the key to success, because we all are looking for, I'm not going to say a get rich quick scheme, or the keys to happiness, or the keys to marriage, I mean, we've been married for 45 years. It'll be 46 this year. And people will ask, man, how in the ham fat did you guys stay married for 46 years?
Yeah.
I said, we made a decision to stay married every day.
Come on.
Give us this day. Give us this day our daily bread, like it says in the Lord's Prayer. And if you stay married once a day, then that day would lead to another day.
Yep.
And that day would lead to a week, in a month, in a year, and before you know it, my God, you know, we look back and we laugh. We look at the journey that we've had together, the kids and grandkids that God has given us. And I mean, I am, you know, pushing 70 years old. And when did I get to be 70 years old?
Right.
I don't feel 70. You know, I don't look 70.
That's
I'm
right,
the
baby.
best looking, you know, 60,
That's right.
70-year-old that you ever seen in your life. You know, we just honor God. We honor each other. We can't outgive God. We can't outgive each other. And we just respect the covenant that God has given us.
Yep.
And here we are 45, 46 years later. And I would just say, to live with the mindset of Christ and to live one day, because all we have is one day. All we have is 86,400 seconds in every day. So what are you going to do with your 86,400 seconds that God gives you?
That's good, man. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, brother, for being on the show today, and thank you for everyone that's listened here on this episode.
JD, appreciate you, man. Take care.
Man, Greg, that was so good, brother. Like, just everything that you said. And you know, if you want to pick up your own copy of the book, Punt, Flip the Field, you can check it out at gregcoleman8.com, and you can pick up a copy. And you know, we talk about these books just because we want to give you literature and things that you can read that's going to take your mind to the next level. Now, if you are an athlete or a musician or someone who's trying to reach the next level, and you have maybe performance anxiety, imposter syndrome, performance trauma, or any of the other many barriers that you can run into as a high-level performer, reach out to us at www.bullishstrive.com and talk to us. Set up a free consultation. I'd love to just hear your story, hear how we can potentially work together and help you overcome your barriers and reach your next level, and at least, you know, instill just powerful mindset skills that you can take outside of your craft, outside of your art, and into life beyond that. www.bullishstrive.com. I'd love to meet you. And always remember, it starts with you, and your destiny is waiting. Peace.